be the same formulas at the beginning. So of course, that's a really good reference point, just in case you forget any of them. And there's actually one problem on here that you would actually need it for. So it's good that you'd have it. So let's see. Let me just look to see which ones are the most beneficial to review. As I said in the last class, the problems normally progress in difficulty as you go on through the test. So these problems right over here are expected to be very easy. I'll do number 3 just because it's a review of geometry as well. So it says, in the figure above, lines L and M are parallel, and lines S and T are also parallel. So if the measure of angle 1 is 35, what is the angle of measure 2? Now, this kind of goes back to the intersecting lines thing we did in the problem before, where if you have 2 lines intersecting, these 2 will be equal, and then these 2 will be equal. That same philosophy. So we're just gonna do that a whole bunch of times, and that's how you'll get angle 2. And all right, so it says that angle 1, let's look at the lines. So angle 1 is at the top. So which ones are similar? So these 2 are equal, and since they're parallel, these 2 are also going to be equal. And since they're since it's a line, there's another philosophy that says that if you have a line, the angle in total will be 180 degrees. So if you split it up like this, something over here is going to be something, and something over here is going to be another thing, but together, you know that they have to add up to 180. So here, if angle 1 is 35, then the angle right next to it has to be, I think that ends up being 145. Yeah, because 145 and 135 add up to 180. And since it's on a line, we know that's true. And since these lines are parallel, you can just apply the same principles over here, where those are equal. Sorry, that's confusing. So if that's 145, this one will be 145, that one will be 145, and that's your answer. It's just kind of like going back to those geometry principles, but this one is actually not too bad. So I'm gonna go on to the next page. A lot of these are just slope, which I think you guys know how to do because it's a very elementary topic. I'm gonna do number 5 just because it's kind of relating to stats, which is another topic that I think we don't see enough of in school, just like geometry. So we kind of forget about it, but it's really important on the SAT, just like geometry. So let's see. It says, which of the following graphs shows a strong negative association between D and T? Okay, so just a refresher. A positive association means that the line is going up. Negative association means the line is going down. It says negative, so out of these, we already know it can't be this because that's going up. And strong means that the lines are close to the, they're close to a point that kind of matches a line. If there's a whole bunch of lines, if there's a whole bunch of points like there are in A, it's not as strong. But if you look at D, the points are closer together, which means that the association is stronger. So the simple answer to this one is just D, because in this point, it's going down and the points are close together. This one is going down, but they're not that close together. And this is kind of just going straight. So there's really no relationship. So let's see. I'm going to go on to the page. And all right. So let me clear this and go on to the next page. I think that number 8. Let's do number 8 because there's absolute value. So that one can be kind of tricky, I guess. So it says, for what value of n is n minus 1, the absolute value of n minus 1 plus 1 equal to 0? Well, let's think about it this way. Oh, okay. In order for this to be equal to 0, this has to be equal to -1. But if you go back to what an absolute value is, you know that absolute values can never be negative. It can't be negative. So there's no way that this can be negative. So the answer is simply D. So that is just another problem. A lot of these problems are not even asking you to solve. They're really just asking you to know like the rules of just math altogether. Even the triangle one with the cosines and the sines, you didn't have to solve anything. You just had to know that 90 minus x is equal to sine of x. And this is another one. You just need to know that there's no way that an absolute value can be negative. And by doing that, you get the answer very quickly. But there's also a whole bunch of answers there just to trick you off and make sure that you want to get it wrong, just because the SAT is like that. They want to trick you and reduce your chance of doing well. But I promise that after doing a whole bunch of problems, you get the gist of it. So let's move on to the next page. Again, a lot of these are interpreting graphs. So I'll do one of them as we get to it, but they're not too bad. And they're actually one of the more easier ones. All right. This is, how about I do number 12? Because number 9 and 10 are just equations, linear equations. So those are easy. And also notice how a lot of these problems so far, you don't need a calculator for them. So like, believe me when I say that a lot of these can be solved without it. And I will only tell you to pick it up if we really need it. Like maybe for number 9, you might need it because there's a whole bunch of decimals. So that would be good. But for number 12, the ones that we've done before, you don't really need it. So I'm going to do number 12. So it says, based on the histogram above, of the following, which is the closest to the average, the arithmetic mean, of number of seeds per apple? So this is kind of just like, how would I describe this? It's basically just kind of testing your knowledge of what an average is, which is again relating to statistics. So let's see. It's asking for the average number of seeds per apple. So let's look at the graph and kind of just like interpret it. So the y-axis is just the number of apples and the x-axis is the number of seeds. So I'm just gonna write it down as I go on. It seems that 2 apples have 3 seeds. It seems that 0 apples have 4 seeds. It seems that 4 apples have 5 seeds. So I'm going to write 5, 5, 5, and 5. It seems that only 1 apple has 6 seeds. It seems that 2 apples have 7. And it seems that 3 have 9. And where we're doing an average, we have to add all these up together and divide by the number there are in total, the number of numbers. And if you look here, it nicely comes out to 12. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just add up all the number of seeds that we got. So 3 plus 3 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, which is 20, plus 6 plus 7 plus 7, plus 9 plus 9 plus 9. That's a lot of numbers, but that's how you do it. And then once you do that, you divide by the number of apples that were there, which was 12. And I don't know if you did that in your calculator, but you end up getting 73 over 12, which is very, very close to 6. So the answer is 6. My only tip for this question is just make sure that you know what you're counting. It's asking for the average or the number of seeds, the average of the number of seeds. So don't get confused with that the average of apples, for example. That would be wrong. It's just you have to find the average of the number of seeds, and this is the best way to do it. So that would be C, and I'm gonna move on to the next problem or next page. I think 13 is a good review of like graphs, so I'll do that one. I'm actually gonna do 13 and 14 because 14 covers stats. So let's see. A group of 10th grade students responded to a survey that asked which math course they were currently enrolled in. The survey data were broken down as shown in the data above, in the table above. Which of the following categories accounts for approximately 19% of all survey respondents? So, there are actually many ways to do this type of problem, but I think the easiest way to do this, and this is a tip, some of these problems it's easier to just solve and get the answer, but a lot of these are easier to just go answer by answer and then process of elimination, test to see if that one is true, and then move on to the next one. This is the best way to do it because there's so many possible ways you can get 19%, and there's so many possible ways you can figure out a total and a fraction. So I think it's just easier to just use your calculator this time and kind of guess and check. So it's saying out of all the survey respondents, so everything is going to be out of 310 because that is the total number of survey people. So we're going to go by each answer and test it. So it says females taking geometry. So if we look here, females geometry, that's 53. So 53 out of 310 are females taking geometry. Now, all you have to do is put that in your calculator, 53 divided by 310. You get 0.17, which is definitely not 19% because that's 17%. So that's not the answer. Females taking algebra 2. Let's try that one. It's always going to be out of 310. Females algebra 2, 62. Divide it in your calculator. You get 0.2, which is 20%. That's not the answer. And then males taking geometry. Let's try that one. Males taking geometry is right over here, 59, 310. That ends up being 19. So that's the answer. And as you can see, it's very easy to do. Mind you, this took us like 1 minute to do when I was explaining it, but all you have to do is just put in your calculator. You don't have to show any work if you don't want to. When I did this practice test, I don't have any work that goes with it, just because I am sure that I just put in my calculator and got the answer. So it's very simple to do, and just, at least for this problem, recognize that it's easier to test every option rather than going through every single one in the chart and testing that until you find it, because there's only 4 options and there's 9 parts in the chart, so it's easier to do it that way. Let's do number 14. So it says the table above lists the lengths to the nearest inch of a random sample of 21 brown bullhead fish. The outlier measurement of 24 inches is an error of the mean, median, and range of the values listed, which will change the most if the 24-inch measurement is removed from the data. So the one thing I will tell you is that this is a very common statistics fact. I recently took stats this year, so like Miss Green, if you go to Goldman, like kind of put this in our head. The median will never, ever, ever be affected by outliers. And it says that it's an outlier measurement. So the median is probably going to be somewhere around here. But even if we take this value out, remember the median is just calculated by finding the middle value. As you can see, if we take it out, it's still going to be like around here, which is going to be 12. So it's definitely not going to be median, which means that if it's not median, it can't be D either because median is not changing. So they can't all change by the same amount. So now all we have to do is figure out if one is affected more by the mean or the range. The range is very easy to find. So the range, when there was the 24-inch measurement, it was simply, that is 16, because 24 minus 8 is 16. The range is the highest value minus the lowest value. And now it's 16 minus 8. Let me make a chart just so it's easier. So this is going to be our old, and this is going to be new. And then over here, I'm going to do range. So the range at first, 24 minus 8 is 16. The new is 8. So I went down by 8. So how about the mean? The mean, you can't really calculate it unless you put all the values in your calculator. So I know it's tedious, but at least for me, I would just put it in just to make sure. But and this is the advantage of having the TI 84 plus CE. The other calculators that are approved, I'm sure that we all have them just from our math classes. They all work, but the TI 84 plus CE, even if you don't take calculus or pre-calculus, it's really helpful for the SAT. And I'll kind of like show you what I do on the calculator just so it's easier to see. Remember, to find the mean, you have to add up all the values here and then divide by the number of values. So it's going to be 21 in the first sample, and in the second sample, it's going to be 20 because we're taking out 1. We're taking out the 24, so you're left with 20. So I'm going to add them up and tell you what I get, just because it is a little bit tedious, but I think this is the best way to solve it. If there's another way to solve it, then I'm probably missing out on it. But yeah, so I'm adding it. I'm adding all of them. And then I got 262 for this, 238 for this. Correct me if you got something different. Just remember, if you have any questions or if there's anything that you just catch that I'm doing wrong, because I make mistakes too, let me know. So that is the total value I got. You don't need to add them all over again. Just know that before you add the 24, that's what you got for this new value. And then when you add 24, that's what you get there. So then when you do the average, 26 divided by 21, you get like 12.467. And then when you do it again, you get 11.9. So obviously the range is the most affected. And now that you think about it, if you just look at the data set as a whole, this won't always be true, but the mean will usually always be close to the median. The median we said was around 12. And notice how in both cases they're close to 12. So even by taking out the 24, I would say something different to you guys. I would say test it if, for example, this value like 24, if it was like 128, for example, let's say it was that, then the mean would be much greater because we're adding a larger value and it's going to pull everything to that larger value. But since 24 is kind of close to 12, I would say that this could have just been easily the range. And the mean, this is just something that you could have just checked very easily on your calculator if you just wanted to be sure. Because sometimes the guesses we do make end up being wrong. So I think that's just very, keep an eye out for that. That's what I would say. So number 15 is just graphs. 16 is equations. These are very easy problems. If you need any help with them, if you do them on your own time, of course I'll be willing to help, but it's all like linear stuff, so it's not too bad. Again, these are not too bad, I think, but I'm gonna try number 18 because I think 18 has a lot of letters. And one thing that I was always intimidated by were just whenever I saw a whole bunch of letters in an equation, then I would get kind of freaked out. So let's see. It says in the xy plane, if 0, 0 is a solution to the system of inequalities above, which of the following relationships between A and B must be true? Okay, so I'm going to plug in 0 into both. Just because when I see a whole bunch of variables, I kind of just want to get rid of them. And it says 0, 0, so that means that it works. So let's try it. So if we plug in 0 to the first one, you get here, and then plug in 0 to the x, and then you have A. So that means 0 is greater than A. Now let's try plugging it into the second one, because that also works. It's telling us it's a system of inequalities. So both inequalities support the solution 0, 0. When you plug in 0 here, you get that 0 is greater than B. Now this is kind of just using math logic, but the answer is actually very simple. If A is greater than 0 and B is less than 0, that means that A is positive, B is negative, and positive is greater than negative. So that means A is greater than B, and that's the answer. I don't know if there's another way to do it. When I did this problem, I think that was just like the most logical way I saw it. But just think of whenever you have a problem like this, try to see if there's anything you can plug in to help. The fact that it gave us the 0 and 0, I think is like the gateway to getting this answer. So I think that was the most important part. I'm not gonna do 19 because that one, again, I think you guys will find easy. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna try number 20. Number 21 is kind of similar to that one we just did. The one where I said like to guess and check. This one will be easier though, because it's just finding a fraction. So I'm gonna do 20. So it says Alma bought a laptop computer at a store that gave a 20% discount off its original price. The total amount she paid to the cashier was P dollars, including an 8% sales tax on the discounted price. So which of the following represents the original price of the computer in terms of P? So so the original price of the computer. So let's think about discounts and taxes and things like that. So I'm gonna call the original price, actually no, I'll call it, well, I'll just call it Z because O looks like a zero. So the original price, it says that they gave her a 20% discount. So she really paid 80% of that price. And then once she had the discount, she paid an 8% sales tax. And an 8% sales tax can be represented like this, 1.8, because she's paying this price plus an 8%. So this is pretty much what she paid. And it says that what she paid is P. So I'm going to set this equal to P. And now it says we need to find the original price in terms of P. So all I'm going to do is just isolate this. So you have 0.8 here, you have 1.08 there. You divide by the same thing on both sides. Don't bother multiplying it out because, as you can see, all the answers have it just as unsimplified. So the original price is P over 0.8 times 1.08, which is this answer, D. Again, a lot of these problems don't require the calculator. This could have easily been on the non-calculator portion. They just want you to kind of have it next to you so you waste time when a lot of these really don't require it.